INFPs, this is Amanda, and today I'm going to do something just like a little bit different from what I would normally do. So, for a lot of the videos that I have up here on YouTube, I tend to like to keep them pretty short, like 3 or 4 minutes, and really take like just like one central theme, and just make a nice like pithy short video. Kind of do more of a presentation style because my own natural speaking style is much more, kind of slower and more rambling. And that's kind of thought I would actually do in this video today. Not ramble necessarily, but just kind of like take a more informal approach to talking about a topic. I'm kind of thinking about this in my mind as sort of like having a chat, rather than trying to present something. So um, today's video is about writing goals that INFP writers may have, and it'll be, yeah, just a little bit more of an informal style. And also, the video will probably be longer, so I don't want it to be, too long, but we'll see. It'll just be as long as it needs to be, but certainly more than 3 or 4 minutes. But I thought that I wanted to do a video on this topic, on specifically about writing goals, because I've gotten some feedback recently from both from this channel, as well as my INFP newsletter that I send out weekly. And I asked some questions and made some content around goals, of course, because it's the beginning of a new year. I think that's when a lot of people are thinking about it. And I got a lot of great feedback, but what I also got in there was some specific feedback on writing goals. And I thought, oh yeah, it would be great to like dig into that specifically, and just talk about some writing goals that you might have for this year and some things to consider when you're setting those goals or when you're going about trying to achieve them. So yeah, this is sort of like a little writing goals chat for INFPs. How about that? All right. So there's a couple of things, and I've got some notes here. So since this is a bit more informal, I'm gonna sit these up here in case I need to refer back. So I thought that there were like a couple of, I think INFP writers, their writing goals maybe tend to fall into a couple of different categories. And the first one I thought of are completion goals, right? This is a big thing. So a lot of the work I do with INFPs is in the topic of productivity. And because one thing that INFPs have difficulty with, I mean, I guess everybody does to some extent, but I think INFPs find me when there's something they want to complete and they're having trouble doing so. So, and this would be no different for writers. Having completion goals is very typical for any writer. And for INFPs who maybe have a little bit more trouble, a little bit more challenge, like keeping themselves on track, keeping themselves moving forward, I think completion goals are often up there as a big one for INFPs. So, what might that look like? I think in a lot of cases, it could be sort of like a smaller goal. Like maybe you've got goals around the number of words that you'd like to write, and that could be for a project, on a project level. Like I'm trying to write a novel and I want to hit 75,000 words or something like that. And it can also be more in terms of like for a writing session. What do you want to do? How many words do you want to write each time you sit down to write? So that's an example of a completion goal. I think the other thing too is just is writing frequency, right? When there's a story you want to complete or a book you want to complete, um, you have to write. So, I think, having goals around the number of times you're going to write in a week or in a month or something like that are also pretty high up there. And and then the last thing, I realized that in a way I'm sort of talking to established writers or just people who already write. But I realized too that there could be people watching this video who want to write and never have outside of work or school. And so your goals might be around just like getting started. Um, so those are like your completion goals. There's something I want to do, there's something I want to finish. I'm going to set goals around doing that. The second thing that I think a lot of INFP writers will set goals around is some sort of publishing goal, right? Something where you're feeling ready to like put your work out there, and yeah, and there's some kind of goal around that, and it could be right. So there's a lot of ways to put your work out there. There's certainly self-publishing in a variety of forms, and there's traditional publishing as well. So you know maybe you feel like it's time to start querying agents, or maybe there are short story markets that you'd like to start submitting to. But there's something around, it's time for me to get my work out there, and I have goals about doing that. This one I thought about. I had a comment come in on a video I did recently, and the person mentioned, getting up the courage to put their work out into the world. To I think they did specifically mention self-publishing. Um, but yeah, um, there's that goal as well. So yeah, I mean, and there could be, of course, there could be other types of goals, but I think those are like two big categories of the types of goals that an INFP writer would set for themselves. Um, and I think that maybe one thing to consider as you're considering your goals is, do you actually need these? Sometimes we're setting goals around things that we feel like for whatever reason, right, that we should do them, quote unquote. And I think you got to be a little bit careful about goals like this, but they can be hard to recognize as well. Say like with a completion goal, right? Let's say with like a word, like a session word count goal. I want to sit down and I want to write 1,000 words each writing session. A good thing to do would be to ask yourself right off the bat why you want to set that goal. Is that something that you actually need to do? Will writing 1,000 words each time you sit down to write, will that help you in some way? Is that something that's going to feel satisfying to you? Or like, did you hear it out there? You know what I mean? Like, is it something um, is it something that you have picked up from the internet, that like every time you sit down to write, you're supposed to have a word count goal? And my own experience here is that early on when I was writing, I used word count goals, and I think I think it did work for me at that time. Especially like as a newer writer, when I was trying to establish kind of a habit of doing it, and I wanted to move. At the time, I was I was like almost always working on a novel, so I wanted to move that forward. Um, and I think, and so for a while, I had the goal of every time I sat down, I was going to write 1,000 words, and I would generally hit that. But I think also too, like I was picking up on this idea that this is something that writers are supposed to do. You're supposed to sit down and reach a certain number of words. You know, because like now when I over the years, now when I write, um, I don't really have a word count goal at all. I would say if it anything, it's roughly 500 words. But I found that with my fiction, at least, sometimes with my nonfiction, I will write to more of a goal. But with my fiction, um, I sit down, the flow starts, I start writing, and I stop writing when the flow stops. And I mean, that could be, I mean, I could sit down for just a real short session and write something like 200 to 300 words, or I could sit down and, I finally stop at 1,200 words. And yeah, and I don't I don't really need to have like a specific goal right now, and that works fine. So I think something to keep in mind there, and it could be the same thing with your publishing goals as well. Now there's a little bit of a different angle here because with publishing, you're putting your work out into the world, which you probably do want to do. Like, I don't like, not very many writers, INFP or otherwise, write in some kind of a vacuum where they never want a reader. Like, you're writing something because on the other side of that is this reader that you would like to have. But I think we can have shoulds around our publishing goals as well. Um, and I think here, um, the key is, well. So what I was going to say was, one of the things with publishing goals, especially if you feel like you really have to get up the courage to do something, if you're feeling anxious about it, is like really to move gradually with it. You don't have to be kind of all or nothing here. You don't have to jump in to the deep end. You can like put your toes in first and get used to the water. Um, but and the other thing that I kind of want you to consider here too is, is it the right time for that? Are you ready for that? Um, like I said, there is a likelihood that at some point in the future you do want to get your work out there, but for INFPs in particular, your writing space, when you're in this story, it can often be like a very kind of sacred space for you. And when you go subjecting that, even if you haven't done it yet, even if you're just thinking about it, when you go subjecting that to the whims of the public or the whims of the marketplace, you can lose that sacredness. You can lose that space that's important to you. I have an INFP friend who is a fantasy writer, and I was talking to her about her novel that she was working on one day, and I could really get the impression that like when she would sit down to write, she entered a world that was all of her own, and I think she was at the time, I do believe she wanted to pursue like a traditional path, and so she was kind of getting up, starting to query agents or preparing for that process. But like, she was really running into some hard blocks there, you know, sort of like procrastination type issues. But I wondered if the underlying issue is that she was scared of kind of losing this sacred space that she had when she was all by herself and entering the world of her story. To, like I said, like to start subjecting that to other things can be difficult, and you may not want to lose it. You may not want to, you may not want to lose that just yet, even if you do have a future goal of having your writing published in some way. So yeah, I mean, so like I think with your publishing goals, like I said, like moving gradually is a good thing to do, because you don't have to be like, you can start to put your work out there in an informal way that certainly doesn't involve being traditionally published, but it doesn't even involve like, say, publishing ebooks or paperbacks to like the big retailers. You can publish on your website, you can publish on social media, you can do things in email newsletters, you can share with a writing group, you can maybe use platforms like Wattpad or something similar. So yeah, like feel free to move gradually with your publishing goals and consider that you might be feeling discomfort because you're going to that writing and creativity space is a place you go that feels good and that maybe allows you to retreat from the world a little bit, and it can feel publishing kind of imposes upon that. So so this was just sort of my sort of some thoughts about how I think um, INFP writers might be thinking about their goals. So I'm curious, like if this resonates for you, like if you have writing goals, like do they sort of fall into one of these two categories? You know, is it something else? I know for myself, I'm not really operating with any kind of like hard goals this year in terms of writing fiction, but I have started um, I've started working on my novel again that I've actually had going on for about 5 years. I took a long break on it, long story short. So I would say, like, if I have like a goal, of any sort, it's to move that along. And you'll notice I'm being really vague and really flexible here, and it's because that's really how I'm thinking of it and how I'm feeling that it kind of feels right. So it would be like lovely to have a first draft of this done by the end of 2023, but that is not something that I feel any need to put any kind of a hard goal around. If I get there, that would be awesome. If I don't, that's perfectly fine. Um, so maybe it's a little bit more of an intention, but actually, like, I think the way that I was thinking about this a few weeks back when I was doing some thinking about it was like, instead of thinking of very specific goals, I was sort of thinking of like, what has energy around it for me right now? What feels energetic? And like my novel, like I can feel there's energy around it for me, and it makes me think. So like it's that's kind of moving me forward, um, right? It's motivating me, but it feels like moving this novel forward, writing more words on it is the right thing to do. I mean, very loosely a goal, but like I don't feel that it would be, I don't really feel that it would actually be all that productive for me or necessary to put, to put a hard goal around it. It's just I feel that energy there, and the only real like goal that I have is just to keep working on it and just to move it a little further, um, every week, every, on a consistent basis, but maybe not even real frequently. So that's sort of my writing goal, or writing aim, or writing intention for the year, is this novel that I'm working on. All right. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this chat. So I'm looking. I'm at 18 minutes now, which 18 minutes actually goes by pretty fast. If you've stuck with me this long, thanks a lot for watching. And yeah, just hope this gives you like some food for thought. And feel free to leave in a comment, any of your writing goals, whether they're hard goals or not, or anything you're thinking about in this area. It would just be interesting to see that. Um, and before I go, I do just want to talk a little bit about my INFP newsletter that I have. So this is it's just a free newsletter I send out weekly. I may send it out a little bit more often if I'm, releasing something into the world, like a course or a book or something like that. But um, the For INFPs newsletter is really designed to just be just like kind of be like a short resource that shows up in your email each week. Usually I'll just like pick one thing, like something that I think that is of interest to INFPs, whether that's an article or a video, or who knows, maybe it's a book, or, who knows what it might be. And yeah, just write, it's just a short thing with a link to a resource. So Yeah, news tips and resources for INFPs. I think is how I describe the newsletter. And I'll put the link below to sign up for that. And that's another thing. If you also enjoyed this chat today, as a welcome gift for signing up for the newsletter, I do offer access to an interview that I did. It's actually about 4 years ago now, but it's still very relevant in terms of um, writing and self-publishing for INFPs. So I was interviewed and by a couple of people, and we've got all. It was I was interviewed by an INFJ and an INFP, and we just had a conversation about fiction writing, self-publishing, and also like being in business for yourself. So, because I've been self-employed now for 7 years. So yeah, if you enjoyed this kind of chat, I think you would enjoy the interview. I just talk about, I talk about my fiction journey, my self-publishing journey, and and I talk about those things from the perspective of doing them as an INFP and trying to, figure out that process for myself, and try to keep things authentic and yeah, just my way of doing things. So again, that link will be underneath this video. Um, and yeah, so if you're interested in, what did I say? News, tips, and resources, news, and tips for INFPs. Um, you can join my email newsletter, and like I said, that comes out once a week. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you've been here this long, thanks for watching. And I'd like to do some more of these kind of informal chats. But anyways, have a good one, guys, and I will see you in the next video.